billionaire spots a lonely waitress crying at his wife's grave. What follows changes everything. What if losing someone precious led you to an unexpected bond, one that offered healing, purpose, and a love you never saw on the horizon? Jake Montgomery was a man whose name carried weight. At 45, he'd built a financial empire, appeared on the covers of major magazines, and lived in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. His private jet was always ready, his influence unmatched. But none of it mattered anymore. Not since Emily. 3 years earlier, Emily Montgomery, his wife, his partner, his world, had died from a sudden heart attack. One moment she was laughing at his failed attempt at making pancakes, and the next she was gone. The paramedics, the hospital lights, the sterile smell, it all blended into a nightmare he could never escape. Jake had conquered the business world, yet he couldn't save her, and that failure haunted every silent corner of his life. He stopped attending galas, stopped picking up calls from his sister Claire or his old friend Mark. His company ran itself, guided by loyal employees who tiptoed around his grief. Jake's universe narrowed to one ritual. Every Saturday, he drove to Willow Creek Cemetery to visit Emily's grave. He'd stand there, tracing the letters of her name, whispering apologies into the quiet air. This Saturday felt no different. The sky hung heavy with gray as he parked his black Mercedes and walked the familiar path. He brought no flowers. Emily always said they wilt too fast. Instead, he carried memories, jagged and incomplete. As he knelt to brush leaves off the headstone, a sound reached him, a soft, breaking sob. Jake looked up, surprised. The cemetery was usually empty, but beneath an old oak tree sat a young woman, drenched by the drizzle, clutching a single daisy. Her shoulders trembled with a grief that mirrored his own. He hesitated, unsure whether to approach, but something held him there. Finally, he walked toward her. "Excuse me," Jake said gently. "Are you all right?" The woman flinched, lifting her face. She looked no older than 25, her brown eyes red and tired. A diner name tag read, "Lily." I'm okay," she whispered. "Just visiting." Jake glanced at the gravestone beside her. Margaret Ann Dawson, beloved mother, 1965 to 2024. Too young, he thought. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just understand." "You lost someone too?" she asked quietly. "My wife. 3 years ago. I come here every week." Lily's expression softened with recognition. "I'm here for my mom. She passed from cancer a few months ago." The word hung between them, heavy and familiar. "Mind if I sit?" Jake asked. After a moment, Lily nodded. He sat beside her on the damp grass, ignoring the rain. For a while, they said nothing. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. When Lily finally stood to leave, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in years, a connection he didn't want to lose. "Will you be here next week?" he asked, before he could stop himself. She met his eyes. "Maybe," she murmured, then slipped into the mist. Jake couldn't stop thinking about her quiet sadness, her strength, the honesty in her voice. On Monday, he found himself at Sunny's, the diner where she worked. He pretended it was just for coffee, but he knew better. Lily moved with practiced grace behind the counter. She looked steadier here, though the sadness still lingered in her eyes. When she approached his booth, surprise flickered across her face. "You," she said with a small smile. "Didn't expect to see you." "Thought I'd try the coffee," Jake replied, though he barely looked at the menu. They talked between her refills and short breaks. Lily shared pieces of her life, growing up in a tiny apartment with her mom, working long hours to support her 16-year-old brother, Ethan, who was battling leukemia. Her voice cracked when she mentioned his diagnosis. Jake shared pieces of his soul too, not the billionaire life, but the human one. How he met Emily, how she teased him about his music, how losing her broke him. Lily listened, truly listened, and it eased something inside him. Their quiet routine grew. Every Saturday, they sat at the cemetery, sharing stories about the ones they'd lost. Jake talked about Emily's love for painting. Lily spoke about her mother's talent for baking. Each confession chipped away at the walls they'd built around their hearts. One afternoon, Lily asked, "Do you think the pain ever stops?" Jake studied Emily's headstone. "I don't think it stops, but I do think it gets lighter to carry." Lily nodded, tears gathering. "I hope so." Their connection wasn't romantic yet, but it was real. Jake visited the diner more often. He found comfort in Lily's presence, in her resilience. Then came the day Lily arrived at the cemetery, looking pale and shaken, a letter clenched in her hands. "Ethan's getting worse," she whispered. "They don't think he'll make it to Christmas." Jake's heart ached. Though he'd never met Ethan, Lily's love for him was unmistakable. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "I keep thinking if I hadn't pushed my mom away when I was scared, maybe I'd know how to help him." She wept. Jake felt her pain as if it were his own. He thought of Emily, the arguments left unsettled, the nights he chose work instead of her. "I made mistakes too," he said, "but our love mattered, and so did yours." For the first time, she took his hand. It was a fragile, hopeful moment. That night, Jake made a decision. He had resources, wealth he'd been running from. Maybe he couldn't save Emily, but maybe he could save someone else. He created the Emily Montgomery Foundation, pouring millions into helping families facing terminal illness. He didn't mention it to Lily at first. When he finally told her, late one night at the diner, she froze in disbelief. "You did this for Emily?" "For her, and for families like yours." Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "You're a good man, Jake." Her words touched something deep in him. Inspired, Lily started a grief support group called Healing Hearts. Jake attended the first meeting, sitting quietly among strangers, listening to their stories. It was painful, and strangely healing. As months passed, Jake found himself laughing again, sleeping again, living again. Lily's presence became a light in his once dark world. But Ethan grew worse. Despite Jake funding treatments and calling in specialists, the outlook was grim. Then one afternoon, Lily burst into the diner, her face glowing. "Jake, you won't believe it. Ethan's latest tests, they're clear. The cancer is in remission." Jake stared, stunned. "That's incredible." Lily laughed, a sound bright and full of life. "Your support gave me strength, and I think, somehow, it reached Ethan." Jake shook his head gently. "This was Ethan's victory, and yours." But Lily wrapped her arms around him, her hug filled with gratitude. And for the first time, Jake felt his grief begin to loosen its grip. Later, in the parking lot, Lily said softly, "I'm thinking of going back to school for social work. I want to help people, like you helped me. But I'm scared it's too late." Jake held her hand. "It's never too late, Lily. You've already changed my life." A year passed. Jake visited Emily's grave one final time. The autumn light cast a golden glow across the cemetery. Kneeling, he whispered, "Thank you, Emily, for loving me, for teaching me how to live. I'll always love you. But I think I'm ready to let go." He stood and saw Lily waiting by the oak tree, sunlight catching her hair. She was in college now, her support group thriving. Ethan was healthy again, and Jake?
Jake was no longer the hollow man he once was. He walked towards her, offering his hand. She took it with a radiant smile. Together, they left the graves behind, walking toward a future shaped by loss, hope, and second chances. As the sun set over Willow Creek, Jake felt a quiet certainty. He and Lily weren't just healing, they were finally home.